Happy Thursday to everybody who's joining us. And I have been super excited about today all week long, partially because Carolyn's back to talk about the reading order tool, but it is also Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Probably my favorite quote unquote holiday, international holiday all year. And my Twitter is I spend more time on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook today than pretty much every other day of the year because of all the amazing stuff that gets pushed out from different organizations. Nick and I had the pleasure of interviewing Megan with Open Arms Dance Project on my Facebook this morning as well to celebrate her amazing and not really interactive, but poetic audio described dance film. So if you guys get a chance to check that out, she previewed some of the film for us, and she gets to finally debut this award-winning video. Nick, do you remember exactly what the award was?
Was the Syringa Award?
Yeah.
Syringa, right? Idaho is the state flower.
Yeah.
Syringa, so it's the Syringa Award for Arts.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing video, and she gets to finally release it on June 11th at 7 p.m. at Jump. So I wanted to jump in and throw those out there as people started jumping in to here today to talk about the fun-filled adventure of the reading order tool in Adobe Acrobat. Oh, it can be fun, depending on your definition of fun. I find it overwhelming. So, Carolyn, welcome back.
Sometimes welcome, everyone. Sorry I missed you guys a couple weeks ago.
I'm going to take a quick look at our. Oh my goodness, I'm having a day over here. I turned that off, and then I knocked over my soda. Happy Thursday.
Do you want me to share my screen to present, Lane, while you're getting that taken care of?
Yeah, I was actually going to have you present, but I was going to look at the participants list to see, make sure we've got people jumping in and that we're not missing anybody. So we're about 32 people there. So, okay. I feel like we could probably jump in and get started with the reading order tool. I'm super excited about this. It's kind of a complex topic, and Carolyn has done a great job of kind of breaking that down a little bit more for folks. So I'm gonna stop talking and turn it over.
Okay, can everyone see the slide deck?
Looks good.
Okay, all right. So we are nearing the end. We're on the downhill side of our accessible PDF form series. And like Lane said, today we're going to talk about the reading order tool. So a lot of the questions that we've had through this series up to now, some of it is going to be answered today. I know it's seemed like a long journey to get to here, but once you've set up that accessible document and followed all those steps up to this point, then the reading order tool becomes a little less mystic, I guess is the question, a little less clunky to work with. And a lot of the times when you are working with a document that's already been designed and created, and you're stepping into the document to work on those final accessibility pieces, this is usually the step you're starting at. So some of this may seem more familiar to you guys. Just one second. All right. So again, you're probably familiar with these housekeeping tools. Live captioning is available, but right now you're all muted. Participation is encouraged. You can raise your hand to speak and we'll unmute you if you have a question. You can also type a question into the Q&A and they'll let me know what that question is. And there's also chat available for technical questions, commenting, and for you to provide feedback. So you guys might be familiar with that so far. Today, we are going to do a quick recap of what you did in part 5 2 weeks ago, and then we'll go over what today's outcomes are. And then I'll spend probably about 10 minutes kind of giving an overview of what tags and reading order are in Adobe. And then we'll have kind of a demonstration, and then hopefully we'll wrap up soon so you guys can try it out on your own and play around with it and ask any questions you guys might have. And I may have to pause momentarily. My little guy is trying to break out of nap time. So we'll see if I can get far. As a reminder, the scenario for this series is to create a training needs survey for state employees. Our desired outcome, we need to have it work for 3 different contexts. So it needs to be printed that you can complete with pen and paper. It needs to be available in electronic format that you can complete using a computer or mobile device. And it also needs to have that electronic structure, those tags available to allow assistive technology users to complete using a computer as well. 2 weeks ago, you guys talked about electronic signature. So it was more of kind of a general discussion where you discussed the challenges faced by people with disabilities when signing documents. You also learned about some of the advantages and challenges from electronic signatures, and then also some different strategies for implementing electronic signatures in PDF documents. So that was what we did last time. Now we're jumping back into our document and going to talk about tags and reading orders. So the goal today is to tag our form fields using the Find Content tool, which I'm so happy to share this one with you because it took me like a year to figure out how to do that. And you guys won't have to do those struggles. You'll know how to do that now after today. And then we'll use the reading order tool, and I'll talk about how you can use it to tag the document and verify the reading order. And then also how you can rearrange the reading order using the order navigation pane. And at the end, we will have a tagged PDF form. So this is what we've been working towards the last, 5 weeks or 10 weeks, something like that. So let's get started. So what are tags? I really like this definition from the company Accessible Docs. PDF tags are the key to accessing a PDF document content with assistive technology such as screen readers. When a tagged PDF is created, each page element in the document is tagged, and each tag identifies, sorry, just a second. I lost my screen there. Each tag identifies the type of content and stores some attribute about it. They also rearrange or arrange the document in a hierarchical structure. So that's that tag tree that we showed earlier. And the tag tree forms a logical structure of the document. That's the reading order. So that's how those all interplay together. So tags do not change the visible view of the document. They don't change the way text appears. They don't change any of the design. They really are that structure behind the scenes to provide that content and context about what's in the document. They also improve reflow for small screens. So a new feature in the Adobe Reading app, which has completely changed the way I look at documents on my mobile phone. If the document is tagged and has some of those tagged features, it can go through a reflow process. So these 2 screenshots, the first screenshot shows a document that hasn't had the reflow applied to it. And this little button up here, this liquid ink process, if you're using the Adobe Reader app on your phone and you have a document pulled up, you can click that button and you will get a version that has been reflowed and sized to be better on the mobile screen. So you can compare these 2 sizes, and one looks much more like a web page layout. The text is easier to read, it's different sizes. The design is still the same, but it's been reflowed to be a little bit more reader friendly. So that's what those tags can do also to improve that reading experience on small screens. So how do we add tags to our document? One of the best things you can do is start out with an accessible source document. So we did that in Microsoft Word, where we used styles, we used headings, we used all those style tags to apply that structure to our Word document. When we saved as a PDF, that tag structure remained. So in this screenshot, we have our PDF document, and then I have this tag tree selected, and you can see that we have headings, we have paragraphs, and with this, oh, sorry, I'm not on Adobe, I can't scroll like that. So we have that tag structure that is already started for us. That's a great way to get ahead in tagging your document, is to use that source document to use those style tags. Now, after we've added all of our form fields, one of the first things we did when we got into the Adobe PDF document is we added form fields. So we used that prepare form tool. We drew on our form fields. We added the lines and the borders. We've added tooltips and labels for all of that. All that work we've done is fantastic, but Adobe doesn't automatically tag those as form fields. So they don't appear in our tag tree. So what we can do is under the content, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute, but under content, we can find unmarked annotations, and that will find all of our form fields, and we can tag them and provide a title so that they are in the tag tree and we understand what they are. After we've done that, so this is a screenshot that shows all of those form fields are now in our tag tree. So all of the tags say form, and then they have a label after it. So date, name, organization, job title, Adobe. That's that title that I mentioned. Having that title there makes it super easy to understand what those form fields are. So what those tags are. If we didn't add that title, it would just say form. And it's a little harder to troubleshoot if you have to now dig through all those form fields, form tags to find the one that you need. So adding that little title attribute is a huge time saver. They are added at the end of your tag tree by default. So here in our tag tree, we have our section content. If we were to expand that, we would see all those headings and paragraph tags. The form fields are all added at the end. That's just one day, maybe Adobe won't do this, but for right now, it just puts them all at the end of the reading order. What we need to do is put them in logical reading order so that they follow the paragraph tags where we expect them to. So for example, for our date paragraph text, we want the date form field to follow it. So we can do that by using the reading order tool and the order navigation pane in our document. So to access the reading order tool, it's under the accessibility tool item. So depending on your version, it might be available slightly different places. In the DC version, it's just under the accessibility tool tab, and you can open reading order tool. And this tool is really handy because it has some quick links to common tags. So things like paragraphs, form fields, figure, caption, things like that. So you can tag things as you go. One thing I've had trouble doing with this reading order tool is selecting the form fields and then tagging it as a form field from here. So I use a little bit different process that I think is a little faster, and I'll show you how to do that. You can also toggle between these page content order views. So if you have this highlighted, all of the pieces of content will have a number next to it to show what order it's in. You can also toggle to the structure types. The structure type will tell you if it's a heading or a paragraph or a list item or a link or anything like that. So I like using those two different toggle buttons depending on what I need. I always like to look at the structure type just to make sure my headings came over from Microsoft Word the way I needed them to. If I need to make any changes, I can do that pretty quickly. The other thing to note on this reading order tool, the first time you pull this up, this display like elements in a single block may be checked. I recommend unchecking that, especially when you're working on forms, because what that does is that allows you to highlight date and make that its own paragraph tag separate from name. They appear on the same line of text, so they could be tagged as one paragraph tag, but they are two separate kind of form fields. So we need to be able to have them in their own paragraph tag element. So uncheck that display like elements in a single block. Otherwise, all your paragraph text may appear as one giant paragraph tag when you need to have it broken up a little bit more. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility with how you use your tags. The other thing that's really handy is the order navigation pane. So the reading order tool allows you to make changes within the document itself. You can select certain types of content and tag it as certain things, but the order navigation pane allows you to actually change that reading order. And if you remember, if you don't have any of these navigation panes available, you go to View, Show Hide, navigation panes, and then you select order from that navigation pane. And just like the tags are put at the end of the tag tree, all of your form fields are going to be at the end of your reading order just by default. So what you do is you drag, you click it, you drag it to where you need to go. So this is where you do need to have a mouse to be able to move all that stuff. I hope one day they make it keyboard accessible, because it can get a little tricky depending on where you put it. It's very precise sometimes. But having these labels is really handy. If you remember back to our prepare form field process, when we put in that form field title, that's what displays here. So having a pretty clear title will help you identify where in the reading order with that piece of paragraph text or heading text that form field needs to go next to. So that becomes really handy later on if you have a pretty clear field label. If you just have generic labels that are just like check 1, check 2, check 3, it may be a little more difficult to figure out where they need to go. So that's where having that clear title can come in handy as well. Are there any questions before I jump in and demonstrate the process?
I haven't seen any pop up yet. So while you kind of get ready to switch over, I will keep an eye on chat and Q&A. I know some people are probably starting to feel like we've been doing this forever.
I know.
We've had a lot to break down into.
It's a process. It
Yeah.
really does help in the end to kind of know how all these pieces fit together. Like I said, I've self-taught how to do this, and I've just kind of muddled through a lot of it over the past 5 years, and really breaking it down and understanding how the pieces connect together has been extremely valuable for me. I've learned some tricks the last few weeks that have sped up my process and made my documents even better. So hopefully it is a long road, but you know, we're getting you there. We're getting you all the tricks that you need to know. All right, can you guys all see my Adobe document?
Yes.
Perfect. So here we have our beautiful form. We have our form fields. It's probably looking just as you would expect a form to look. I will say, when you get to this step, when it gets to the tagging, this is where things can go wrong. If they do go wrong, it's in this step. So save often and save after you've done anything and it's working, if that makes sense. So every time you arrange a tag or add a tag or arrange something in the reading order tool, save often, because there have been times where I've completely lost all my work because there's no undo button. I can't go back and undo the work. So I've had to close down my document, open it back up at the last point it worked. So save often to save your work. And I'll show you a little bit more about what that means. So here we have our tag tree. We don't have any form fields there. Let me just try this really quick. So for the reading order tool, it is under accessibility. And then I've got my videos here, sorry. So the reading order tool is under accessibility. The one thing I've had trouble doing is selecting form fields. And you could do it this way. So you can select your form field and tag it as a form field this way. I find that's a little bit more tedious. Another way you could do that is use the content find tool, because that will allow you to kind of tag everything as you go. So under the content panel, and again, if you need to add any of these, the view menu option has all of these under the show hide navigation panes. So under content, I'm going to select find, and I want to find all unmarked annotations. And I'm going to search my whole document because we have 2 pages. And it will highlight, can you guys see it's highlighting my date form field? If I select tag element this way, I can either just type in form or I can select form from the button. And I want to add that title. So I'm just going to call this date. And then it will go to the next one. So this is my name field. So again, this is that title that we're going to add to that tag tree. I will tag one without it so you can see what it looks like without it. And then I'll add the titles to the rest. So this is job title. Tag element as tools Adobe. And you can also use your keyboard shortcut keys to make this process a little faster. So this is again why I like this other than the reading tool, because it does give you some of that keyboard accessibility. So this, I'm going to call it Tools Google. Click Enter, Shift Tab to select tag element, tab down to title and type in Tools Microsoft. So it does give you a little bit more of that keyboard accessibility using the find option. And I'm going to call this Tools Templates. And speeds up the process slightly than just using that drag and drop around the field using the reading order tool. I'll just tag these really quick. And this is tools, yes. We've got tools, no. Tools, I don't know. Percent document, percent web.
Okay, Carolyn, we've got a couple of things here.
Yeah.
So we did see a hand that got raised, but it might have been an accident. Feel free to raise your hand again if you are interested in talking. We also see, Chelsea, if you have any questions, we saw that message. Don't hesitate to reach out and stop us. We can slow it down. But we do have a question that if you make a mistake when tagging and tag an element as, say, a link rather than a form field, how can you change that? And what?
Excellent question. So I'll show you a couple places that you can do that. So let's see. I'll just do this first page so that way we have some to work with. And then okay, so I'll come back to those. So now we have our form field. So I've gone through and found all of those unmarked annotations, and we now have form field tags in our tag tree. And I left one without a title. So this is one way you can fix this. If it's in your tag tree, you can open it. So right click and select properties. And you can select a different tag from the type dropdown. So that's one way to fix it. I want to keep this form, but I missed a title. So anytime you have a tag highlighted, it should highlight it in your document as well. So I want to add a title to this one because I missed it in my tag tree or when I was doing that find annotation. So I'm going to call this organization. So now that title is there next to the form tag, so it's easy to see kind of what these different tags are. The other way you can make a change, if you use the reading order tool, let's say I want to make this a head, let's say I accidentally had this a heading 3 in Microsoft Word. It is as simple as selecting the text and choosing your different tags. So that's a couple different ways. The reading order tool, you have more limited options in your tags. So it's what's here: text, paragraph, figure, form field, figure caption, your 6 headings, reference note, background artifact, formula cell, and then you can select things as tables. If you need more options, go into the tag tree and select the properties. So that's how you can choose. So you can see there's a ton more tags available: article, annotation, bibliography, block quote. I tend to not use those. If I was working in more complex documents, I might. I tend to stick with headings, paragraphs, tagging my form fields, occasionally tables, and figures. And then every now and then this background artifact one is helpful if you kind of want to make something kind of mark it as decorative or have it be ignored. So have it put in the background. That can be really helpful if you're working in a document that has lots of, I use that a lot if it's a lot of like decorative things, like big blocks of just color that are there as like a screen, rather than tagging it as a figure and giving it alternative text. I send that to the background so that the text is just visible. So I use that one quite a bit too, but that form properties will let you fine tune that tag. The key is it has to be in your tag tree for you to be able to change the properties. So that's where adding the reading order tool, highlighting your text, just clicking your mouse and dragging around the text and selecting like paragraph will put that into your tag tree, and then you can adjust it from there. Does that help? Okay, I didn't hear anything. So we've got all our tags here. And what we need to do now is they're not in any kind of order. So if we look at this reading order tool right now, they're tagged as structure types. If I want to look at the page content order, I can select page content order, and now I can see the numbers that everything is situated in. And you'll notice that all of the form fields start at 26, 27, 28, where we want them to follow the piece of text on the page. So where I mentioned this display like elements in a single block, if you notice the difference when I turn that on and off, it lumps everything together, which can make it a little more challenging when you're working with a form field where you need to insert that form tag in between pieces of text. So if I uncheck that, it will tag them individually. But there are still some instances where, like this number 6, name and date are listed as one piece of paragraph text. Adobe Acrobat Pro, Google Docs, Microsoft Office, prepared templates, and other are also lumped as one big block of text. You can use this reading order tool to clean that up a little bit. Had a fly buzzing in front of my face. So select date and tag it as text paragraph. So now we've got date and name as 2 individual tags. And if we look under the content and expand our tag, now you can see those are 2 different paragraph containers. If we go down to Adobe, our list of tools, so we have Adobe Acrobat Pro. Again, I want to tag that. So now I have an individual container that's paragraph for Adobe Acrobat Pro. I'm going to repeat that for Google Docs, for Microsoft Office, and for prepared templates. And it should put other, please specify. It's got a little bit of a placeholder in front of it, so I'm just going to highlight that piece as well and select it as text. So now, if you end up with any additional containers like this, it just is a place. You can delete these containers from there because it wasn't really any content. It was just sort of a placeholder from when we had those tags all around it. The other place that we have that is this yes, no, I don't know, or I'm unsure. So since those were all one single line in Microsoft Word, they're carried over as one piece of paragraph text here. So I can select it, tag it, and then just double check. It looks like I had a little empty container there, so I can clean that up. So now I have yes, no, I don't know, or I am unsure. If you have any empty paragraph tags like this, you can delete them from this content order tool. They're not really they don't contain any content. And sometimes if you have a paragraph break or some extra spaces, they may come in as empty paragraph containers. You can clean that up in this tool. So any questions so far?
Yes, we've got
Yes.
2. Okay,
Yes.
so the first one, is there a reason you're not tagging the information in the header?
Yes. So remember, think back to our Microsoft Word where I said the heading and the footer is hidden by default. Do you guys remember that? Anything that you put in the header of your document or the footer of your document doesn't get tagged automatically. In this instance, the our Idaho Digital Accessibility Consortium logo and our needs assessment survey for state employees. That's kind of our title. Instead of tagging it on the document itself, I'm going to put that information in the title field that gets announced when someone opens this document. So it's doing the same thing, but I'm just putting it in a different spot. You can totally tag this information. And a lot of the times I do. I just didn't think in this particular instance, having the title listed twice would be helpful. It might be redundant. And Lane, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I'm providing the same information just in the title attribute as opposed to tagging it in the document itself. If you want to, you can certainly highlight your content in your header and then tag it as a figure and add alternative text. And then you can also tag this content as like paragraph text. And so that way it will read it. But since it's essentially the title, I was going to put that in the title field that's announced for screen reader users. When they open the document, it says the title, and then they could jump right to survey instructions, which is my heading one. Does that make sense?
I hit the answer live before you finish, so I'm gonna
Okay.
have her. Hopefully that answered your question. Don't
Okay.
hesitate to add another question if that doesn't.
But yeah.
But then another one, I just wanted to go here. You already answered the question in regards to the reading order, and it's showing blank containers.
Yep.
And then deleting those. But then also I wanted to point out, because you could do that in the Word doc as well, right? With your hide show paragraph marks and adjust the formatting so that your hard return just turns into space between paragraphs rather than hitting enter.
Absolutely. And so those are a couple different ways that you can see them. You might see those empty paragraph containers if you don't exactly draw that reading order tool around the content. You may end up with kind of a blank container. Or if in your Word document you're using those hard returns, you can adjust the style there. So it shows up a couple different ways. We used those spacing tools to really eliminate some of those, but every now and then they pop up. Depending on how Adobe is feeling that day, apparently. So yes.
Okay, so she wants some clarification here. What was that again about Word and the styles for hard returns, and could we demonstrate? But didn't we demonstrate that in the first? We did.
So go,
if you,
yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, so if you go back to, I think, is it session 2? Session 2 has all of those demonstrations. I have a whole video series on how to use those spacing tools instead of just enter, 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 and adding those hard returns. So go back and find those, and I have a whole playlist of videos for you to demonstrate that.
Okay, she missed session 2, so yes, I will.
Perfect.
I will get this in a message to you. Give me a moment. I'll give you a link to the recording.
Perfect, because I have videos that you can walk through that whole process to learn that. But yeah, that is one thing you'll probably see is those empty containers. You can delete them on the content navigation pane. So now we're at reading order. So this is where things can, if they do go wrong in Adobe, it's changing the reading order. So the best thing you can do, let me just double check here. So we've got our forms. We've got our containers. So now we're going to go to the order navigation pane. And if we expand our page 1, we have those same content containers, but now we have all of our form fields at the end. So the best thing you can do is just select your form field and you drag it to where you need it to go. So in this case, I need it to go after date, and I hope it stays there. There it does. So I'm going to save because it stayed where I wanted it to be. And then name is going to go after name. And then I'm just going to save as I go, because sometimes, and I have no idea why, but sometimes I'll be moving things around and all of a sudden 6 other pieces of content moved also, and I don't know why. Or especially if you're moving things like images, the images also default to the end. So you'll always have to move your images if you have images in your document that weren't in line in your regular document. Those can sometimes cause things to just act a little funny. Save as you go every time it looks the way you want it to. And if all else fails, close your document, open it back up again. Sometimes that just clears things out so that it works a little better. But you just drag and drop things to where you go, and having that clear title on the field label can help you quickly figure out where things need to go. So my Adobe form field needs to go after my Adobe Acrobat Pro. Google needs to go after Google. Microsoft needs to go after Microsoft. Templates after templates. And then things are working good. So I'm going to save. And then we've got our other checkbox. So we've got our other checkbox, and then we have our other text box. So those are going to go in order, and you can see the reading order updating on the page as we go. And if you don't have those labels, especially if you're working on a document that maybe you didn't start and you're not sure what those form fields are, you can click on it and it should highlight it in your document. So that can help you kind of troubleshoot. So here we've got tools. Yes, it's highlighted there. The other thing I just learned, on your reading order tool, next to show page content groups, there's these little black boxes. I always thought those were just check marks. You can change the color of what is being highlighted. So that's another way you can make it a little more accessible for you if you need a little bit better contrast to highlight the content on the page. So that was something I just happened upon myself. The default is black. Sometimes having a little bit better contrast can make it easier to see all these different fields. So use those settings if you need them. Yes. Let's see, tools, yes, tools, no. Tools, I don't know, or I am unsure.
So Carol and Wendy just
Yes.
had a good suggestion that she's found that pulling from the bottom up is more effective than pulling it down. And
Oh,
so
starting
like from the bottom.
So from the bottom of the list up, I've noticed that too, especially if you're dealing with the paragraph text. And really it's just kind of a preference. Like I said, sometimes even when I attended a session from Adobe, the trainers themselves, they're like, sometimes this just is different depending on the days and the computer you're using. So I have had to just walk away from my document and let it sit for a little bit and then come back and fix it. But I have found saving often when it's where you want it to be can be helpful, because there's nothing more sad than getting your document to this point and then having it kind of break when you're so close to getting it done.
Okay, so we've got 3 more things coming in here.
Absolutely.
So what is the thought behind having a checkbox be in the reading order after the content?
So that's so instead of having the checkbox first and then the paragraph text.
Correct.
I think it's because logically you're reading the option first and then checking it. So that's more of a convention that I'm trying to follow the logical reading order of the document. You don't read checkbox and then the label. You read Adobe Acrobat Pro and then you check it, if that makes sense.
I think so. That's great. Okay. And then can you use shift highlight and add all 3 yes, no, and sure at one time? You
can. So that's also where some things can get a little squirrely, but you can select more than one option. Hold down the control key, hold down the shift and select the multiple items. And then you can move them to different spots. So you can do that. And I do that like where we had the yes, no, I don't know, or I am unsure, I might move them all up to the top and then rearrange it from there. I usually only do that if I have those sets that need to be moved in one group, because otherwise it's easy to get lost. So here we've got 49.
And while you're doing that, just going to let everyone know, yes, all of these trainings are going to be available on the Canvas from now on.
So here's an example of how I tried to fix one of my issues and they jumped up to the top. So, and it messed up some of my other stuff. So every now and then that does help, that does happen. So that's again why you save as you go, because for whatever reason, if you make a change, it might all of a sudden put it to the top of the list or like might undo some of your work. And I have found no rhyme or reason, no consistency for why it does that. But every now and then it does. And it's so confusing and frustrated because you're like, but I didn't put it in number 1. Why is it in number 1 now? So that's how you drag and drop in the reading order tool. And then you can use the document to kind of help double check this. And again, I just go through and kind of read it out loud in my head and make sure, does this order make sense? So here we've got survey instructions 1, and then our paragraph text. If you've added hyperlinks in your Word document, they will automatically be tagged as needed, because tags, links need like 2 sets of tags. So I try to add any of my hyperlinks in Microsoft Word so that that conversion process tags these correctly, because links can get a little tricky. Just adding links to a PDF document is difficult, and then tagging it is a little difficult as well. So that's an example where, if you can, go back to that original source document and make sure any hyperlink that you've added is active there before you save it as a PDF document. So here we've got our name and date, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We've got our Adobe Acrobat Pro and then our checkbox after it. So logically, it will read out the label and then you can check it. 21, 22, 25, same with this. And then we're going to have the checkbox for our other, please specify what tool. So the next in order goes our checkbox and then our text box. And then we've got our yes, no, I don't know. So 29 is yes, 30 is our checkbox, 31 is no, 32 is our checkbox, 34 is, or 33 is I don't know, or I am sure, and 34 is our tools. And then these all follow the order. Same with here and this. So that's how we have the reading order. Does anyone have any questions? We're kind of at the 15-20 minute mark. So that's what I've got for today.
Not seeing anything in here. That was great. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay.
And yeah, with the Canvas is going to be hopefully a staple for us in IDEC. It's not going anywhere. That was our whole plan. It's a little bit more accessible and easier than YouTube or anything else we've talked about, Google Drive. So plan to use that as a resource and share it. Share it with everyone who's interested.
Yeah, and I'll just go ahead and do this next page as we're going. And then if you guys have any questions, feel free to hop in, but I'll go ahead and wrap up this second page just to demonstrate the process again. So I'm doing find element, unmarked annotations, and I'm tagging. And then we're tagging that future training. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to demonstrate. So our find is complete. And now we've got those tags. So when we update the reading order, so here we've got our challenges, our training, and this future, I don't need to move it anywhere because it's where it needs to be at the bottom. If you go back to your tag tree, you'll notice those tags are now within our section content. So that's really cool. So that tag tree is following that logical structure. But we had that one straggler, form future training. Since I didn't move it anywhere, it didn't move it in the tag tree. So if I want to, I can move it into this section as well. So now all of our section content is linked together. It's all in logical order. And we don't have any empty paragraph containers, anything like that. So at this point, our document is mostly accessible. You know, if you were to share it at this point, it would be pretty much good to go. The one other piece that you can do, we mentioned we didn't tag this title. What we can do is under File, Properties, this is this title field that every document needs. If you don't have a title in this field, then it just calls out the file name. So this is where you can, again, provide that information for users. Since I have needs assessment survey for state employees, I can add Idaho Digital Accessibility Consortium to this title field as well. So then the title of the document will display here as well.
And that title, Carolyn, can be pretty important if you have a document that you need people to be able to search the web for. Our search engine optimization tools, so Google's tools that go and look for things out there on the World Wide Web, it's looking at that title attribute. If you have a database, internal database of documents that you're posting to, and it has a search feature, it's going to look to that title attribute. It's not going to look for the name of the file that you gave it when you created it on your computer in File Explorer. It's always going to look at that title. So a lot of people overlook that. They're like, oh, well, I gave the document a name that is meaningful when I created it and saved it on my computer, so I don't have to do that. It feels like duplicative work, but it is important duplicative work.
Yeah, so that's why the titles of the document, since there's not a title tag, it's heading 1. I tend to put the title of the document in that field and then also in the heading of my document. Because if I'm looking at the screen, you know, the first thing my eyes go to is Idaho Digital Accessibility Consortium needs assessment survey for state employees. But then I want that survey instructions to remain my heading 1, because I want people to be able to jump to that heading when they're going to the document. Adding that information in the title properties does the same thing. It's just presented to people in a different way. So again, it's not really duplication because people are accessing it in different ways. So if you have other content in that header area, you certainly can tag it. But in this particular document and in this context, I thought it would be more helpful to have it in that title attribute.
Chuck that up to one of the many very subjective decisions document creators have to make.
Yeah, it really is. So I was trying to think about the user experience and hearing that same piece of information twice as opposed to once. But yeah, it all is, you are creating the experience for whoever is going to be reading this document. And there's a ton of decisions you have to make. I tried to go back to, you know, what is going to be the most user-friendly application for the people reading this document. So that's why I left those untagged. It's still there. The content is still there. It's just being presented a little bit differently. So anything else you guys want me to demonstrate? This really is the tricky part of accessible documents. And this is also the part where a lot of people step into creating accessible documents. We aren't always there at the very beginning of the document creation process, so we can't influence some of those decisions of, well, why did they use a table here? Or why did we do this? Or they are missing styles, or they have multiple hard returns. We aren't always there at the beginning to create the document. Sometimes we're given the document and are told, we got to make it accessible. So these are really the tools you're going to use to make it accessible.
This is definitely the core of any document remediation, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And next week, or not next week, 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about that accessibility check. The fantastic thing is, if you've done all these steps up till now, if you were to check accessibility at this point, you really are done. You pretty much just have to pull in that title field. And when you save it, it now says Idaho Digital Accessibility Consortium needs assessment survey for state employees. We've done the reading order. We've paid attention to the colors we're using and have good contrast. So our document is accessible at this point. What we're going to do next week is talk about some of those different ways you can troubleshoot errors that might show up in this document. The process we've showed you up till now will get you an accessible document almost before you do this accessibility check. But next week, the next session, I want to spend some time showing you the different types of common errors that we see in that accessibility report and give you some tips on how to troubleshoot it, because that's really where a lot of the times you have to reverse engineer how to fix it. And since you know the process now, how to make an accessible document, it will help that troubleshooting process a little bit more. But I'll show you some tricks on, if you have this type of error, here's some things you can do to fix it. If you have this type of error, here's what it might mean. So I think that's where we'll spend the bulk of our time next time. because at this point, we have a tagged PDF form that is accessible for all 3 of those different contexts, which is fantastic. So next week, we'll spend some time going over the, well, what do I do if it's not accessible? How do I fix it type stuff.